Thank you for joining us. We are now about to begin our panel on empowering women and girls through tech. Please feel free to enter questions in the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen, and the moderator will take them at the end if time permits. I will now hand things over to our moderator, Marcina Tilleman of the GBBC.
Thank you so much, Jack, and I feel very fortunate to be joined by such an esteemed group of panelists, and very fortunate because I don't think we could have asked for a better introduction to our conversation than the previous panel. Today we're going to be talking about empowering women and girls through tech. And we've spoken most recently about the power of education, and I think that's absolutely a point that we'll touch on. But just to kind of set the stage, the World Bank suggests that women in developing economies are 20% less likely to have a bank account. Further, in many places, even when accounts are under a woman's name, the male relatives tend to control them. In addition to a lack of access to banking and financial institutions, the digital divide for women remains far greater than it is for men. Globally, the UN estimates that 200 million more men have internet access than women, and women are far less likely to own a smartphone or pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, or math. So, just from a very high level, other than obvious arguments for creating more fair and equitable systems, I am curious to get your perspective on the general societal benefits of closing the gender gap. So if we can just go through the panelists, we'll start with you, Itzael, just to give a couple of examples of why this is such a critical area to focus our energies in.
Yes, thank you, Marcina, and thank you to all the speakers, and thank you to all that are joining us. Well, let's put it this way. It is a demographic fact. Women represent half of the world population and therefore also half of this potential. So I will say that the first benefit to bring this potential to the technology sector is to open labor opportunities for them because they could generate economic growth and social development. And second, women have an incredible ideas and potential for transforming society. Their roles will boost business performance. And third, I will say gender diversity will lead better discussions, decisions, and outcomes for everyone. So women and men have complementary roles, so it is very important to take advantage of this. Thank you, Marcina.
Thank you so much, Itzael, and we feel very privileged. We're currently working on a research paper on this topic with Itzael and IDB, so thank you so much for making the time to join this conversation. And Susan, let's go over to you on your perspective. Why does this really matter?
Hi, Marcina, and again, also thank you to the panel. It's such a privilege to be here. So I look at it from the perspective, a couple of perspectives. One from the diversity and blockchain perspective, and also I am active as a lawyer and consultant on sort of the enterprise side of things too. And I think that the broader input that you get, you have a more robust product. You have more likelihood of adoption. You have less likelihood of it being discriminatory. And overall, it also becomes a very good economic driving factor. It helps performance. It helps create better innovation, better profitability, stronger governance, and stronger problem solving. And overall, I think that creates a much more stable environment and can help with civil infrastructure in general as your economy does better.
Absolutely, thank you so much. And Nitin, let's go over to what's your perspective from a very macro view on the importance of addressing this challenge?
Yes. Hi, Marcina, and thanks for GBBC to invite me to this panel. Thank you very much. So I have two approaches to answer this question. One is a more practical, which is to simply increase the talent pool by ignoring half of the world population, you're not going to be able to solve world problems. In engineering, we consider these wicked problems of the world, and engineers, technologists, scientists are the discipline that helps solve world problems. So we need to bring everyone to the table. So one of the reasons is to increase a talent pool. What you get by increasing a talent pool is you get a spectrum of ideas, of perspectives and viewpoints. And those can only help in coming up with better solutions in a wide variety of ways that uplifts everyone, of course, including women and minorities, both in the developed and the developing world. My second reason for closing this gap is one of aspiration, is to fulfill our goal of our moral obligation. So to make gender parity, especially in technology and engineering, and the access to technology to the gender parity. Yes.
Thank you so much. What a perfect answer. And you are in the minority today, so thank you for representing so beautifully. And Mariana, let's go to you. I'd love to hear your perspective on this question.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone. Nitin's comments resonated strongly with me because he spoke about our moral obligation. And as someone who knows firsthand what is it to be born, in a poor country without access to opportunities that are being provided by tech, and having made my way up to the World Bank, one of the first things I worked on is to empower women and girls with technology, and especially with digital identity, in the sense that giving an identity to every girl, something that I didn't have at my birth, is the first step to recognize them as human beings, simply as part of the society. So to me, the question on what are the benefits is a little bit challenging, because I think it's just an obligation. It's something that needs not to be even asked for, because we have today 1 billion people in the world without a proof of their existence. Nobody knows they exist, and the majority of them are women and young girls. So it is a little bit appalling that in 2020 we still have to discuss why girls and women need to have access to technology and to be empowered through tech. But I welcome this opportunity, and thank you to GBBC, UN Foundation, and others who have put this panel together to discuss more the opportunities for civil society and private sector to actually extend these opportunities. How are we getting there? That's the question for me.
Thank you so much, Mariana. And I think your focus on digital identity is extremely relevant. And I'm wondering how, if at all, your work has changed since this global pandemic. I think we're all recognizing kind of the vulnerabilities inherent to so many of the systems that we rely on. And I would love to hear about how your work has evolved over the last 8 months.
That's a very relevant question. Actually, I'm just out of a panel with the United Nations Department for Social Affairs, Social and Economic Affairs, who released a report just recently on the impact that COVID-19 had on women and girls specifically. And what they found is that mothers and children are losing 20% of their health and social services, access to vital services due to COVID, which places them in even greater vulnerability. We see a spike in maternal births, deaths during the childbirth, and we see children being left behind in orphanages simply because mothers can't take care of them. So what this means for us is that there is a growing number of vulnerable children who have whose births haven't been registered, or services that they had access to before, such as immunizations, or simply health services, are not being accessible. So these children become invisible, and today we know that there are already 600 million children without their birth being registered, without a proof of identity. And now, due to the coronavirus, these numbers increase dramatically. So we are working with frontline organizations, specifically in countries that are hardest hit by COVID, but also in refugee camps, with organizations who are actually going to these camps and assisting mothers and children born in the refugee camps. And we are trying to see how the authorities can provide vital services, and specifically identity papers to them, so that they can be then later taken to hospital if they need to, or enrolled in school, or provided even most basic services. So this is what the pandemic means for us. More collaboration with frontline organizations, and more advocacy, stronger presence, and response from government authorities.
Thank you so much. And I think your experience maps on, unfortunately, very well to what we've seen. We actually released a survey earlier this year to try to get a grasp on the impact of COVID on job losses just in the United States. And we were shocked to find that the vast majority of respondents who had lost income related to COVID were indeed women. And in April, the UN Secretary General said that limited gains in gender equality and women's rights made over the decades are in danger of being rolled back due to COVID-19. And I'm curious to hear from the rest of our panelists how the pandemic has altered or threatened the work in which you're engaged. So let's start with Itzael.
Yes, thank you, Marcina. Well, in the wake of the health crisis, unfortunately facing in all the countries, blockchain, that is a global alliance for the development of blockchain ecosystem, we launched an initiative called David-19. David-19 is an extraordinary tool for the use and monitor the spread of COVID-19. It is one of the kind tool which allows citizens most secure and private manner.
Oh.
Sorry?
We just lost you for a minute. Go on, though.
Okay, yes. Well, this to the management.
Itzael, I might suggest turning off your video because I guess AirMeet does require a lot of bandwidth, and sometimes connectivity is easier without video.
Yes,
so,
thank you, Marcina. I'm very sorry
David.
for that. Yes, I was talking about David-19. And I was saying that nowadays it is evolved into a transparency platform to the management of the vaccination. That is currently the way we see it, that is a necessary tool to pursue and help to the community. So definitely, yes, COVID-19 is changing the way we used to work, and we are focused our forces to try to fight against.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been so impressed by the innovations that have been born from the current pandemic, and really the, I think, renewed interest in innovation as we see the vulnerabilities of the systems which make up the fabric of everyday life, and how they aren't necessarily up to being stressed in the ways that they have been over the last several months. And Susan and Nitin, I'm interested to hear how your work has evolved over the last 8 months.
So we had primarily engaged in a lot of in-person education up to the last 8 months, with some reports and local chapters taking on their own subjects and meeting. And a lot of what we did was in-person networking and teaching in-person networking, which is obvious that you can't have that with COVID. So it's opened up a new kind of networking, which is also interesting. And it's also opened up the possibility of sort of more global remote type employment and education that goes along with that. So we've switched our focus to move towards that type of focus. We were always education based. And trying to put out different types of tools for networking. But I also want to just speak to something. In the last panel, there was a lot of mention of the fact that code doesn't care, meaning that you can code from anywhere. It doesn't matter where your location is. You can write code from anywhere. But I would take that one step further. And one thing that we're seeing, particularly with all of this remote access and remote meetings, is that code might not care, but the context in which the code is written does matter. And that's what's being pointed out by having all of these global meetings and all of these global tools. And these are things that people can work on to make them more inclusive. So that's something that we're seeing as a direct result of COVID, something we're learning and actively engaged in.
Absolutely. And I think it's a wonderful question, and maybe Nitin, you can build on that a little, as well as answering my previous question. But the evolution of technology is definitely impacted by the individuals who build it. We see that with AI and ML and different, maybe even subconscious biases that are baked into these frameworks that we're relying on more and more. And I would love to get your insights on how including women and excluding women in these processes has kind of far-reaching ramifications.
Okay, sure. I'd like to go back to the previous question and then segue into the question you just posed. So COVID, of course, I'm a professor at University of Southern California in Los Angeles. So in March, our university pivoted and went remote, as did most universities around the world. But around the same time, I was working with the Digital Citizen Fund, Roya Mehboob, who's the founder and who was on the previous panel, and the LA Blockchain Lab. Together, we had launched a program to train and teach young women in Afghanistan in blockchain technology. And this was a plan for a long time. And then because of visa issues and ultimately because of the pandemic, we could not bring these young women and teachers to the United States, where I would spend a week or 2 weeks, maybe even longer, in training them about blockchain technology. The goal was to empower them with this knowledge so they could go and teach other teachers, and those teachers could teach students in Afghanistan, especially young women and girls. So this multiplier effect is what we had hoped for. But because of this pandemic, we had to pivot quickly. And then like in February, we decided we were going to do this all online before even the universities went fully online. And it was a very successful event. Of course, being Los Angeles and Afghanistan, 12-hour difference, so we had to work around each other's sleep cycles. But it was very successful, and I was able to deliver this material and build some very nice network of sharing this knowledge, like Educators Without Borders. And then they went on to teach other teachers who went on to teach other students. And we hope to continue this and expand this, because at USC, we have an entire program in blockchain, and we would like to bring that knowledge to these young girls, young women and girls. So going back to the question of biases in AI and ML, machine learning kind of algorithms. So one of my colleagues has coined a very interesting and very apt term called data humanism. Just because data exists and it perpetuates bias, one has to be cognizant that the data is working for us, not the other way around. So we at our university, especially I teach engineering, there's a question of ethics. And we are trying to include ethics in engineering teaching classes, especially around big data, AI, and machine learning. How to eliminate bias just because the data has been coded to include and not question these biases, that can be right. So this initiative of ethics in engineering in technology is a very big topic for us.
Thank you so much, and I couldn't agree more. We were invited last year to a summit with the Pope related to the ethics of technology, and he made many of the same points about tech not being inherently neutral, because it is built by someone, and we have to proactively work to make sure that it serves everyone equally, because that's not the default. Although it may, initially appear that way. And so I appreciate your comments very much. And Mariana, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that topic before we move on.
Yes, I think what we've seen today, it's exactly what you said, Marcina. We realize that technology is not neutral in the sense that if it falls into the wrong hands, then it can harm rather than do good. And the way the technology is designed to start with can be with that intention. And we've seen that in certain authoritarian regimes, right, where tech is being basically weaponized against the citizen. And when it comes to identity, we see that being used against the protesters, against the dissidents, and biases embedded into those technologies of facial recognition, biometrics, show us the fact that it is being designed by male engineers, most of the times white males in Silicon Valley, means that it doesn't have all the necessary prerequisites to actually support the minorities and those who haven't been involved in this design. So what we see at the United Nations again recently with the new digital strategy that the United Nations Secretary General released just a couple of months ago, or maybe early last year. I'm already forgetting time with the pandemic, but basically the idea here is to say governments should extend opportunities to women and to girls and to advance their opportunities for STEM education and to include them in teams that are designing tech. And it's not only women, of course, we're talking about broader inclusion of other minority groups, so that it becomes a technology that is serving everyone, but it's also done by everyone, is designed by everyone. So I think that global awareness and that commitment shows this sort of recognition that this is a necessary step, and it's to uphold our rights and especially human rights.
Thank you so much, Mariana. And I really couldn't agree more. I think having individuals to build these solutions from a more diverse demographic really starts with education. The two are inextricably entwined. And I'm going to direct this next question to anyone who would like to answer it, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how we encourage more women to pursue education and career opportunities in STEM, and whether this is more about social norms or about opportunity.
I'd like to take that question to start off a conversation here. So as you know, in engineering, typically, this has been a male-dominated field, but we have made tremendous strides at my university in this regard. 10 years ago, our freshman class in engineering used to be 20% women. Now, in 2019, our freshman class finally reached gender parity. So 50% of incoming freshmen in engineering are women. And this represents, of course, a demographic of the United States and the world. And the reason for that is the pipeline. We have done tremendous outreach in high school, secondary school, even elementary school. K through 12 education, this is where you make a change in social norms, in gender biases around STEM education. So, and the way we have achieved that is through encouraging professors, both male and female professors, to do outreach at the K through 12 level, especially around role models. It's only when young girls see young women, female professors who come to K through 12 classes, encourage them to code, get some early wins, and see that they can also be an engineer, they could also be a technologist, they could be the CEO of the next big tech company. And 10 years of this outreach has finally worked, is now we have this gender parity achieved in our incoming freshman class. Now, next challenge for us is to make sure that the parity objective continues through graduation. That means the retention of women engineers is all the way through graduation into placement into careers. We are making inroads with that, but I feel education is key in achieving this gender equality, gender parity in the workforce.
Marcina, can I?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Completely agree with Nitin, and I would like to talk about some keywords that he utilized. Encourage woman, it is key. And also Mariana talked about awareness and commitment. Yes, of course, are really important thus as well. We can contribute to improve gender inclusivity and diversity with some specific actions. Stop the stereotypes that technology is in a field for women. We must elevate the female role models, raise awareness about the situation, and as Nitin was saying, encourage women to take the risk on a career of technology or science. They need to have self-confidence and do not overthink it. And third, but last but not least, I will say commitment to change. Private and public sector must understand the need to the diversity. And regarding how to pursue education in technology, we can do it by making available education resources. The more you learn, the more you will succeed. So we can contribute to strengthen women capabilities to be better prepared to this sector. In Blockchain, we recently launched Blockchain Academy. It is a set of free educational resources for strengthening blockchain capacities, which will allow to develop and implement solutions with impact on inclusion. We invite the community, especially women, to join us, to understand technology, to practice with technology, and explore possibilities to apply it. It is a huge opportunity to learn. Blockchain technology, I believe, is about 10, 12 years old. The information is open, and there is a willing to educate and share knowledge through open sources, to open resources, and inclusively free. So in my personal opinion, for example, around this table, we have different academic backgrounds from business to marketing to law to engineering. So I will say that we can combine whatever career with blockchain. There is a plenty to do beyond coding, and with sincere admiration and respect to my colleagues that play this incredible role that is also necessary. But yes, I will say that women need to empower and encourage. We need to encourage them to be more prepared and be part of this technology revolution. Thank you, Marcina.
Thank you so much, Itzel. I couldn't agree more. Mariana, did you have something you wanted to add?
I would like to bring a quote which was very inspiring for me, obviously, as someone who, as I mentioned, was born on a farm in a village in the poorest country in Europe, and then, embraced a career in tech. People ask me what inspired you, and I remember this quote from Maya Angelou, and I think she said something that the most important single thing beyond discipline and expertise or talent is daring to dare. So standing up, to existing social norms, if they haven't evolved in your community, and you don't have a role model in your community to follow, but basically, you can today, thanks to tech and social media, you can see that there are other women you can emulate, and you want to become like them. Dare to become them, and dare to sometimes, transgress your existing community's rules and aspire for something more. And since we are talking about tech, social media today for this generation plays a huge role. So using the power of social media and for example, portray women leaders in the blockchain space in a very cool way, which would appeal to this new generation, to the digital natives, as we call them. I think is critical to inspire this generation of young leaders, young women leaders.
Thank you so much, Mariana. And I would love to hear from Susan and then from Nitin how blockchain specifically can and is being utilized to empower women and girls.
I wanted to comment on the last question, if that's okay. That's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
So I think that we're looking at an environment where there's a lot of striving going on. There's a lot of people who've lost jobs, in a large amount of jobs due to COVID, who are going to need to be retrained. You are looking at a society that is activating its education, a lot of it remotely. You're looking at things where kids are saying, why do things have to be this way? And now the parents who are online with the kids are saying, why does it have to be this way? Where they didn't necessarily ask that technology question or the delivery of technology before. So there's, I think, a certain curiosity that is evolving. If you can look at any sort of silver lining coming out of this, a cultural curiosity of what's this new technology? How can I use it? How can it be made better? How can I be trained to use it? And I sort of put it as an analogy of when the iPhone came in, and kids got it first. I mean, kids were very adept with the iPhones. In most communities that I know, the kids were teaching the parents how to use it. Businesses went to it much slower, right? They were still using BlackBerry and password protected stuff, and nothing that was agile. And the kids just said, no, let's use this. So I think that you're seeing a lot of cross training. But when we talk about sort of the pipeline going forward, which I think is critical, and we're looking at that, I also think there's a huge tendency to sort of forget about all those people who lost jobs, who are older, who need to be retrained. And a lot of them are disproportionately women. And they need some sort of program and access. Listen, in the United States, a lot of the healthcare benefits come through your job. When you don't have that, you don't have healthcare, so you need training to get a job. And I think that kind of opportunity sometimes gets glossed over when you talk about pipeline, because you're only talking about younger, when there's a good portion of this population that really still needs to work and needs to be retrained. So I just think that needs to be brought out as a point.
Absolutely. I think those are some really critical points, and it brings to the fore, the question of the future, how we continue to increase the opportunity set for different populations and make sure to actively promote varied voices as we move forward. And I'll just go back to the previous question, because I think that's kind of why we're all here, but I would love to hear how blockchain specifically is a tool that might be particularly well suited to empowering women and girls today.
So do you want me to, I can jump in on that first. So I split it up between sort of the crypto type peer-to-peer transaction world and what I call more the enterprise blockchain world. Because the peer-to-peer type crypto world is attracting one kind of audience and maybe attracting people who aren't able to hold bank accounts elsewhere. And this gives them an opportunity to have some financial stability, accountability, training, etc. And that's one segment of the population where it can benefit women, I think, disproportionately in a good way. In the enterprise sector, you're facing a new industry that, and I think, is anybody's game to get into. And so on that side, that requires literally the ability to want to learn, the desire to want to learn. Yes, there are a lot of university programs, but I can tell you that most people that I know, other than the hardcore coders, did not go to school to learn about blockchain. They learned about it by taking courses on the internet, by self-teaching, by getting involved with experts, and in groups like this. And so there's a lot of ability for people to learn this and sort of self-equalize the industry from the get-go. So you don't have to have lawsuits and a whole bunch of other things later on saying, hey, we're disproportionately represented. But you can embed that in the culture from the beginning. So I think that I look at it in two segments because I think it is two kinds of segments. But that's a start.
Thank you, Marcina. Can I answer the question about how blockchain technology empower women? I will explain what is blockchain and its value proposition in order to get you to understand how we utilize blockchain to empower population. As I was saying, blockchain is a global alliance for development blockchain ecosystem in Latin American and the Caribbean countries, integrated by different actors in the blockchain environment. And the alliance is led by Inter-American Development Bank, and blockchain is community as well as infrastructure. So blockchain has been listed as one of the Fortune DLT platforms of reference by the International Telecommunication Union. Our mission is to accelerate and enable the adoption of blockchain to foster the gender inequalities and other inequalities in the world. We want to help community to become active users of this free infrastructure. So, but how we do it in the context of blockchain, we launch a blockchain challenge to find blockchain-based solution to prevent and control violence, harassment, and abuse to women, children, and the elderly. And the project addressed the issue of women inclusion and equal conditions in the economy and society, because the victims of violence have several barriers to enter in the economy and increase their productivity. So this digital solution based on blockchains will help women to combat gender violence, accessible from their mobile, and they will able to notarize this evidence, record the unwanted or violent behavior, and then they will enable to proceed with something administrative or start compliant with the local authorities. So in blockchain, we already have several pieces to improve the quality of this project, the notarized tool for the timestamping, the digital wallets to guarantee the digital identity of this person with all the trust and all the autonomy and confidence behind this. And we also have the expertise of our partners and the DLT infrastructure to deploy it. We deserve to feel free, safe, in our homes, school, at work, and we wanted the community will only prosper if we are not struggling to survive with this issue. So with the solution, we want to empower women to use it and to feel safe in wherever they live.
Thank you so much, Isabel. That's such a critical addition to the applications offered on blockchain. And I think, again, we really can't forget that when existing systems fail, the ones who suffer most are the most vulnerable among us. And that is such a smart and important tool directed to them. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I feel very excited about many of the initiatives coming out of the blockchain project. So I'm really, really grateful that we have you here to speak to them. And we don't have too much time left. And so I'm hoping we can actually just go around quickly. And if everyone can offer some quick advice to a woman or a girl who's looking to get into the blockchain industry, what would you tell them? How should they start? What should they do? And let's start with you, Mariana.
It's a very easy one for me, Marcina. I would say the easiest way for a woman or a girl to get into the blockchain space is to contact GBBC. And I think that's the greatest network where I personally have seen most talented women from a variety of backgrounds. And I'm always amazed by the openness, inclusiveness, and also, you know, the fact that you guys extend opportunities to work on real life projects and research projects. I think it's really not just you know, an intention, but it's also hands-on experience. So that's the best for me.
Thank you so much, Mariana. Let's go Nitin, Itzel,
Yes.
and end with Susan.
Yes. So my final thoughts and some words of encouragement is I think we are seeing a revolution. I think blockchain is as big a revolution, could be as big a revolution as the internet was. And this is the time for women to get in, to be both creators and consumers of this technology. It has the potential to change the world the way the computer, the internet, the mobile phone, networks have changed the world in the last 50, 60 years. Blockchain has the potential to do that. So I would encourage women to take a class in just basic blockchain technology. You don't have to be a coder just to understand what the technology and what the use cases are, to be the creator and part of the community. The other part of this is to be the consumer for financial independence, for self-sovereignty, for independence, property rights, inheritance, identity. Many of these things have been mentioned here. These very, very socially relevant attributes and virtues can be used to empower women all around the world. One thing I should say here, blockchain from the get-go is a decentralized system. The power is democratized. It is equalizer. So first time we are seeing in the history of technology that it is not in the hands of a few, it's in the hands of everyone. So I would encourage women that this is the chance, you should grab it and you should make the best of it. And if anyone wants, they can email me. It's my Kale is my last name is my Kale at USC. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm happy to share my knowledge with you.
Completely agree with Nitin and with Mariana and Marcina. I will say that, okay, women and girls need to get into the community. There is a large blockchain ecosystem around the world. So, and there is also an open and available resources, educational resources that they can revise. And as well, I will say that we need to create opportunities for hiring these people, this woman, this power, this new power, and get involved into these new jobs.
So I would say there's a lot of free resources available. And I think that the first thing to do is literally just to jump into maybe some Medium articles or a LinkedIn post and see what makes sense to you. Because there's a lot of information out there. If it sounds overly technical and you want to learn about it, but you're not really a technical person, then look for an article that doesn't talk about it so technically. Look on YouTube. There's a lot of very quick videos that are 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long, that discuss or show you graphically how it works. See which part of this whets your interest, because blockchain technology is kind of an overall big category. It solves a lot of problems. So pick the type of problems that you're interested in solving and then look to see what blockchain is applied in that scenario, because it'll be more interesting for you if you have a passion to solve a certain type of problem and then you see how the technology can be used to do that. But I think that there's a lot, I totally agree with what everybody's saying. Time is now. There is a lot of resources available, and it is most people are self-taught. So there's the barrier to entry is only you at this point.
Thank you all so much for your illuminating insights and your examples. I feel incredibly encouraged just talking to each of you. And I just want to close with two thoughts. One is I feel incredibly privileged to work with a very diverse team led by Sandra Rowe, who has been such a proponent of promoting smart women. And it kind of builds on something that Roya said in the last panel, which is that it's always difficult to be in the minority. And the only way to fix that is to promote and elevate other minorities. And so I'm grateful for all of your efforts to do that and for the opportunity to have this conversation. And I hope it continues. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.